The council chamber on New Busan felt like a tomb as Ambassador Veltar finished speaking. His 3 eyes glowed with exhaustion, and his blue-scaled hands trembled as he shut off the holographic display. The images still burned in everyone's minds. Entire cities reduced to ash, families torn apart by plasma fire, children crying as their mothers pushed them onto the last evacuation ships. Captain Lee Dongwoo sat perfectly still, his scarred face showing nothing. 20 years of military service had taught him to control his expressions, but inside, anger was building like a storm. Round the oval table, other colony leaders watched the alien ambassador with careful eyes. Mayor Kim Hae-won adjusted her glasses nervously. Director Choi Woo-bin drummed his fingers once, then stopped. 17 worlds, Veltar whispered, his voice breaking. 17 worlds in 6 months. The hegemony doesn't just conquer, they erase. Turn our cities into glass, our forests into deserts. Our children couldn't finish. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. Finally, Captain Lee spoke, his voice calm and measured. So you need supplies? Food, medical equipment, maybe some cargo ships for evacuation? Veltar's relief was immediate and obvious. His shoulders sagged as if a great weight had been lifted. Yes, exactly. We understand your people are new to galactic affairs. We don't expect military assistance. We know humans have only been in space for a few decades. Any support would be more than we dared hope for. The ambassador pulled out a data tablet, his movements becoming more animated. We have refugee camps on 3 worlds that need basic supplies. Medicine, water purification systems, shelter materials. If you could spare even a single cargo ship, it would save thousands of lives. Director Choi leaned forward. How many refugees are we talking about? 2 million so far, but the numbers grow daily. The hegemony pushes deeper into our territory every week. We estimate another 5 million will need evacuation in the next month. Mayor Kim made a note on her tablet. What about security for the supply runs? We can provide escort ships, though. ... Veltara's voice trailed off. Everyone knew how effective coalition escorts had been so far. That's when Commander Park Ji-min spoke up from across the table. Her voice was casual, almost conversational, like she was asking about the weather. Tell me about their battle formations. Veltar blinked all 3 eyes in sequence, a sign of confusion in his species. Excuse me, the hegemony? Their standard attack patterns? How do they deploy their heavy cruisers? The ambassador looked around the table, clearly puzzled by the change in topic. I'm not sure why that matters for humanitarian aid, but he pulled up tactical files on his tablet. Well, they typically form a spearhead formation with their dreadnoughts at the center, supported by destroyer screens on the flanks. Their heavy cruisers hang back to provide long-range fire support. Commander Park nodded thoughtfully.
Hey, what?
About their logistics? How do they supply their forward fleets? They use mobile supply stations heavily defended, usually positioned 3 to 4 light-years behind their advanced forces. Veltar was getting more confused by the second. Commander, I appreciate your interest, but we're not asking you to fight them. We just need basic supplies for our refugees. Of course, Park said smoothly. What about their ground forces? How do they secure conquered worlds? They deploy garrison fleets in orbit and establish fortified bases on the surface. Their ground troops are ... efficient. They use terror tactics to break resistance quickly. Veltar's voice turned bitter. They're very good at making examples. Captain Lee had been listening intently. Now he asked, what's their response time when a world calls for help? Usually 12 to 18 hours for emergency response, assuming they have ships in the area. But Captain, why are you asking about military details? I thought you were farmers and miners. Captain's smile was small, but somehow unsettling. We are, among other things. Around the table, the other officials were taking notes, asking questions that seemed oddly specific for civilian administrators. Director Choi wanted to know about hegemony communication protocols. Mayor Kim asked about their fuel requirements. Even the colony's chief engineer, Lee Seung-min, was asking about their ship design specifications. Veltar felt a growing unease. These humans were too calm, too focused. When he described the destruction of entire civilizations, they had listened with the attention of students taking notes, not the horror of civilians hearing about war for the first time. Captain Lee, Veltar said carefully. I'm starting to think there's something you're not telling me about your colony. Captain Lee and Commander Park exchanged a look that lasted exactly 2 seconds. In that brief moment, something passed between them that made Veltar's skin prickle with unease. It was the look of predators recognizing prey, of soldiers receiving orders, of hunters planning an ambush. Just curious about military theory, Lee said with that same slight smile. We'll need some time to discuss your request.
Could you give
Us, say, 48 hours? Of course, but I hope you understand the urgency. Every day we delay, more people die. Oh, we understand perfectly, Commander Park said. Her tone was gentle, but there was something in her eyes that made Veltar think of a blade being drawn from its sheath. We understand exactly what needs to be done. As the meeting ended and Veltar was escorted to his quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just set something in motion that was far bigger than a simple request for humanitarian aid. The humans had been too interested in the wrong details to calm about the right horrors. That night, as he tried to sleep, Veltar heard the sound of ships launching from the colony's spaceport. Many ships. More ships than a farming colony should have had. He was beginning to suspect that Earth's children were not quite what they seemed. 3 days later, Veltar pressed his face against the window of his temporary quarters, barely believing what he was seeing. The quiet farming colony of New Busan was gone, replaced by something that looked like a military fortress growing at impossible speed, where cornfields had stretched to the horizon just yesterday. Massive construction mechs now worked around the clock. Their metal arms moved with mechanical precision, laying foundation after foundation for structures that definitely weren't meant for growing crops. The sound was incredible, a constant symphony of drilling, welding, and heavy machinery that never seemed to stop. Major Kim Tae-hyun strode through the expanding military complex like he owned the place, his boots clicking against newly laid metal flooring that was still warm from the fabricators. The man moved with the confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. Overhead transport ships arrived every hour like clockwork, their massive cargo bays opening to disgorge equipment and personnel with military precision that made Veltar's head spin. "Sir, the Third Fleet has moved to position Gamma," reported Lieutenant Colonel Choi Minho, falling into step beside Kim. The man appeared out of nowhere, like he had been waiting in the shadows. "Admiral Yoon confirms all battle groups are in position." Veltar's 3 eyes widened. "Fleet? What fleet?" 3 days ago, these people had been asking about refugee supply runs. "Good. What about the production facilities?" Kim asked, checking something on a handheld device that definitely looked military grade. "Shipyard 7 is already retooling. They'll have the first batch of hunter-killers ready in 72 hours. Hunter-killers? Veltar felt his stomach drop. Those were warships designed for one thing, destroying other ships with maximum efficiency. He couldn't take it anymore. Gathering his courage, Veltar approached the 2 humans, his legs feeling like jelly. "Excuse me, but I thought you were farmers." Kim Tae-hyun turned, his expression completely neutral. There was something about his eyes that reminded Veltar of a predator sizing up its prey. "We are. Among other things," he gestured to the bustling facility around them with casual pride. "You'd be surprised how quickly farmers can adapt when their neighbors are in trouble." Looking around more carefully, Veltar noticed details that made his skin crawl. The workers moving through the complex wore civilian clothes, but they handled military equipment like they had been born to it. A middle-aged woman directing the assembly of what looked like missile components still wore her baker's apron, flour stains and all. She barked orders at a team of technicians who jumped to obey without question. Near a row of half-assembled fighters, a man was calibrating targeting systems with the focused attention of a master craftsman. His hands were steady and sure, but Veltar could see soil still caked under his fingernails from morning farm work. The man worked on weapon systems like other people worked on tractors. A group of teenagers who looked like they should be in school were instead learning to operate combat drones. Their instructor, a grandmother with kind eyes and graying hair, explained attack patterns like she was teaching them to bake cookies. "Remember, children always approach from the blind spot. The enemy can't hit what they can't see." "But I don't understand," Veltar stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 days ago, you were asking about food supplies for refugees. Now, you're building warships. What's happening here? Lieutenant Colonel Choi smiled, but it wasn't a comfortable expression. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that would change everything. You asked for support? We're getting ready to provide it, but this is impossible. Can't. Build a military force in 3 days. Build, Kim laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Friend, we're not building anything. We're just ... waking up. As if to prove his point, more ships appeared in the sky. These weren't the civilian transports Veltar had seen before. These were sleek, dangerous-looking vessels that moved with the grace of hunting cats. They landed in formations that spoke of military discipline drilled into muscle memory. From the nearest ship, soldiers emerged in perfect synchronization. But these weren't professional military. They were the colonists Veltar had met during his first day. Shopkeeper, who had sold him local food, now carried a plasma rifle like it was part of his body. The teacher, who had been so kind to refugee children, now wore combat armor that fit her like a second skin. Every human colony has 2 faces, Kim explained, watching Veltar's growing horror. The one we show to friends and the one we show to enemies. You came to us as friends, asking for help. So you saw farmers, bakers, teachers, shopkeepers. Now someone is hurting people we care about. So you're seeing the other face. A new sound filled the air, the deep, thrumming hum of massive engines warming up. In the distance, Veltar could see what looked like a mountain moving. As his eyes adjusted, he realized it wasn't a mountain at all. It was a ship, so large it defied comprehension, rising from what he had thought was a natural hill. Camouflage. Screens flickered and died, revealing the true size of the vessel. How many ships do you have hidden here? Veltar asked weakly. Enough was all Kim would say. The transformation wasn't just happening around the colony, it was happening too. The people themselves. The mild-mannered farmers and shopkeepers were moving differently now, with purpose and deadly grace. They checked weapons with practiced efficiency, coordinated complex operations with simple hand signals, prepared for war, like they had been doing it their entire lives, because Veltar was beginning to realize they had been. Lieutenant Colonel Choi checked his watch. Sir, we should head to the briefing. Admiral Yoon will want to review the battle plans. Battle plans? Veltar squeaked. Oh yes, Kim said, his smile turning predatory. We've been studying your hegemony problem. Have some ideas about how to solve it. As they walked deeper into the complex, Veltar saw the true scope of what the humans had hidden. Underground hangars stretched for kilometers, filled with ships of every size and type. Maintenance crews worked on weapon systems that looked like they belonged in nightmares. Strategic displays showed star charts, marked with tactical positions across dozens of systems. The humans hadn't just been listening to his desperate plea for help. They had been planning a war. Admiral Yoon Soo-jin stood on the bridge of the UN's, soul's fury like a statue carved from ice and determination. A tactical display in front of her painted a grim picture. 47 red dots moving toward the blue sphere that represented the Zephyrian homeworld. Each red dot was a hegemony warship, and at their center prowled the massive dreadnought Voidrender, ship so large it could crack planets. The bridge hummed with quiet activity. Officers moved with practiced efficiency, their voices low and controlled. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone knew the odds. Nobody seemed worried. They're not even trying to be subtle, muttered Captain Kong Ho-siak from the weapons station. His fingers danced over holographic controls, marking targets with the casual precision of a man who had done this many times before. Why would they? They'd been steamrolling coalition forces for months. Admiral Yoon's voice was ice-cold calm, but her eyes burned with controlled fury. She had seen the reports from conquered worlds, cities turned to glass, populations enslaved or worse. Communications opened a channel to the hegemony flagship. Lieutenant Park So-young's hands flew over her console. Channel open, Admiral. Main view screen flickered to life, revealing the intimidating form of Hegemony War Commander Grixtel. The alien was a nightmare made flesh 8 feet tall, covered in black chitinous armor that seemed to absorb light. His forearms ended in claws that could tear through steel, and his head was a mass of sensor organs and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. When he saw the human admiral on his screen, all four arms gestured dismissively. "Unknown vessel, you are interfering in hegemony space. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Admiral Yoon stepped closer to the screen, her posture relaxed but somehow threatening. "This is Admiral Yoon Soo-jin of the Earth's Defense Force. You are ordered to cease your attack on Coalition worlds and withdraw your forces immediately." Grixtel's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter, a sound like breaking bones. "Earth? Never heard of it. You have 30 seconds to retreat before we add your primitive ships to the debris field." "Primitive?" Captain Kong whispered. Loud enough for everyone to hear. "He called us primitive." Around the bridge, the crew exchanged looks. Someone actually laughed. The channel closed with an electronic snap. Admiral Yoon turned to her crew, her expression unchanged, but her voice carrying a new edge. "Captain Kong, target their lead destroyers with kinetic rounds. Commander Oyunji, prepare the boarding teams for hostile environment operations. Communications, signal the fleet. Operation Thunderbolt is a go." The Soul's Fury had been invisible. Until that moment, hiding in the shadow of a dead moon, using stealth technology that made her appear as empty space. Now she erupted from concealment, like a predator pouncing on prey. Her railguns spun up with a whine that vibrated through the ship's hull, and spat tungsten slugs at speeds that turned physics into a weapon. The hegemony destroyer Bone Crusher. Was there 1 second and gone the next? The tungsten slug hit at 20% of light speed, and the destroyer simply ceased to exist. Its atoms were scattered across space in an expanding cloud of superheated plasma before the hegemony task. Force could even register what had happened. 12 more human ships materialized from the void around them. They had been hiding everywhere, behind asteroids, in the shadows of gas giant moons, even disguised as space debris. Now they struck with synchronized precision that spoke of countless hours of practice. The human ships moved like wolves hunting. In a pack, they didn't form neat battle lines like the hegemony forces. Instead, they flowed around their enemies like water, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before return fire could find them. Impossible. Grixtel's roar echoed across all communication frequencies as his perfectly ordered formation fell apart in minutes. Where did they come from? How many ships do you have? Captain Kong's grin was predatory as he watched another hegemony cruiser break apart under concentrated fire. Enough. The Soul's Fury rolled to avoid a plasma barrage from 3 enemy ships, her pilot handling the massive warship like it was a fighter craft. As she came out of the roll, her missile tubes opened and spat a cloud of smart munitions that spread out like a deadly flower before homing in on their targets. "This is impossible!" Grixtel screamed again. "Your ships are too small. Your weapons are primitive. How are you doing this?" Commander Oyunji looked up from her tactical station with a smile that would have made sharks nervous. "Simple physics, Commander. Mass times velocity equals dead aliens." A new alarm sounded on Grixtel's bridge as human boarding pods latched onto his dreadnought's hull. Pods looked like metallic seeds, but they burned through armor plating like it was paper. Soon his ship was filled with the sound of human soldiers moving through the corridors with devastating efficiency. "Are you people?" Grixtel demanded, his forearms working frantically at his controls as he tried to coordinate a defense that was falling apart by the second. Admiral Yoon appeared on his screen again, her expression calm but her eyes blazing with righteous anger. "We're the people you should have left alone. We're the neighbors of the folks you've been murdering. We're the species that spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other. Now we're going to teach you everything we learned." "That's impossible. No species wars with itself." Captain Kong's laughter filled the bridge. "Welcome to human space warfare, Admiral. We learned from the best teacher of all." "Ooh," Grixtel demanded, his voice cracking with panic as his ship shuddered under human assault. Each other. The tactical display showed the hegemony formation collapsing completely. Ships that had been advancing in perfect order were now scattered and burning. Some were trying to retreat, but human fighters harassed them like angry wasps. Others were attempting to surrender, but their communications were being jammed by human electronic warfare specialists who had learned their trade fighting other humans. Through it all, Admiral Yoon stood calm and collected on her bridge, watching the destruction with the satisfaction of someone who'd finally found a worthy use for humanity's greatest talent, the ability to wage war with creativity, adaptability, and absolutely no mercy for those who threatened the innocent. The hegemony had expected easy prey. Instead, they had found apex predators who had been waiting their entire history for exactly this moment. The hegemony's response was swift and brutal, exactly what Admiral Yoon had expected. War Marshal Kethmer arrived with the third conquest. Fleet, like an angry god, seeking vengeance. 200 ships strong, his armada was designed to crush entire star systems into submission. The massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the arrogance of a species that had never known defeat. Kethmer was even more intimidating than Grixtel had been. Standing 9 feet tall, his exoskeleton was decorated with the bones of conquered enemies, and his 6 eyes burned with the fury of someone whose reputation had been damaged. He expected to find the human fleet waiting for him in neat battle lines, ready to be destroyed like every other species that had dared oppose the hegemony. Instead, he found empty space. "Where are they?" he snarled at his tactical officer, his voice like grinding metal. The bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was a monument to hegemony power, dark metal, and sharp angles that spoke of a species born for conquest. Unknown. War Marshal. Long-range sensors detect no enemy vessels in this system. The tactical officer's voice shook slightly. Everyone knew what happened to those who brought bad news to Kethmer. The War Marshal's 6 eyes narrowed as he studied the empty tactical display. They can't have just vanished. Deploy sensor drones throughout the system, check every asteroid, every moon, every piece of debris large enough to hide a ship. That's when the first report came in. The supply depot on Hegemony World Crixenel had gone silent. Not destroyed in a spectacular battle, not conquered after a heroic defense, just silent. As if everyone inside had simply stopped existing. Technical malfunction, Kethmer growled. But his mandibles clicked nervously. Then the fuel processing station on Vorthag went dark. Then the command center on Zolme. Then the orbital defense platform above Kethrin. One by one, crucial hegemony. Installations simply stopped responding to communications. Colonel Han Seo Jun crouched in the smoking ruins of the Crixenal depot, his combat armor systems automatically adjusting to the alien atmosphere. Around him, his team moved like shadows. Through the compound, their movements so smooth and coordinated, they seemed to flow like water. The hegemony garrison had been neutralized within minutes, their heavy weapons useless against enemies, who struck from unexpected angles and melted, away before reinforcements could arrive. The depot had been defended by 200 hegemony soldiers, automated defense turrets, and enough firepower to level a city. It had fallen to 12 humans who had appeared from nowhere, struck with surgical precision, and left nothing but silence behind. "Package secured," Han whispered into his communicator, his voice barely audible even to his own team. "Site Alpha is dark. Moving to extraction point." Similar reports echoed across 17 different worlds. The hegemony's rearguard found themselves fighting ghosts, human special forces who seemed to appear from nowhere, strike with devastating precision, and vanish before effective counterattacks could be mounted. But they didn't fight like any enemy the hegemony had encountered before. There were no grand battles, no heroic last stands, no dramatic confrontations. Just sudden violence, followed by eerie silence. On Vorthag, Captain Kim Buora led her team through the fuel processing station, like they owned the place. The facility was a maze of pipes and processing equipment that stretched 4 kilometers underground. But the humans moved through it like they had built it themselves. Their armor systems had mapped every corridor, identified every guard position, and calculated optimal strike patterns before they had even landed. "Target eliminated," came the whisper over their communication channel. "No alarms triggered. Secondary objectives complete. All data core secured. Extraction in 30 seconds. Ghost protocol is active." The hegemony soldiers never knew what hit them. One moment they were manning their posts, confident in the security of their heavily fortified facility. The next moment they were unconscious or dead, and the humans were already gone, leaving behind only empty corridors and the lingering question of how it had happened so fast. Meanwhile, in space, Commander Lee the Jin's stealth squadron played a deadly game of cat and mouse with hegemony patrol fleets. Her ships were equipped with technology that bent light and absorbed sensor waves, making them practically invisible to conventional detection methods. They struck supply convoys like phantoms, appearing long enough to deliver devastating attacks before disappearing into the void. Out bad ba 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 da ba 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 find way Hegemony supply convoy, 12 ships, minimal. Escort. Perfect. Lee smiled grimly. All ships, attack pattern Delta. Hit fast, hit hard, and vanish before they know we were there. The human ships emerged from stealth like predators materializing from the shadows. Their weapons spoke once. Briefly, and 3 hegemony cargo vessels became expanding clouds of debris. Before the escort ships could even target them, the humans were gone again, leaving only wreckage and confusion behind. Back on the Eternal Dominion, where Marshal Kethmer was receiving reports that made no sense. Its 17 installations had been attacked simultaneously across a front that spanned dozens of light years. The coordination required was impossible for any species the hegemony had encountered. "It's not possible," Kethmer repeated for the 100th time, his 6 eyes darting between tactical displays that showed nothing but red markers indicating lost facilities. How can primitive aliens coordinate attacks across such vast distances? Intelligence officer, a trembling creature named Vexai, hesitated before answering. He had been analyzing human tactics for days, and what he had discovered frightened him more than he cared to admit. "Sir, we may have underestimated them. These humans appear to have been fighting each other for millennia. They've developed tactics we've never encountered. It's ridiculous. No species wages war on their own kind with such ... efficiency. Sir, our analysis suggests otherwise. Human history is one continuous record of warfare. They've fought each other. With every weapon imaginable in every environment possible, they've learned to adapt, to improvise, to turn any situation to their advantage." Kethmer's mandibles clicked dismissively. No species could survive such constant conflict. That may be exactly why they're so dangerous, sir. The weak ones died out long ago. What we're facing are the survivors of 10,000 years of the most brutal selection process imaginable. The irony was completely lost on him. The hegemony had built their empire by conquering species that had never known true war, never faced an enemy that fought with the desperate creativity of those who had learned that losing meant extinction. Now they faced humans as species that had spent their entire existence preparing for exactly this kind of fight, and the humans were just getting started. The final confrontation came when Hegemony High Command decided they had endured enough. Humiliation. Supreme War Leader Vashtak himself took command of the core fleet, 500 of the most powerful warships ever built, each one capable of cracking planets. This was the hegemony's ultimate weapon, their final answer to any threat that dared challenge their dominion over the galaxy. Vashtak was a legend among his people, a warrior who had personally conquered 43 worlds and never lost a single battle. His flagship, the Galaxy's End, was a mobile fortress the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that could turn stars into supernovas. When his massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace, it blotted out the stars themselves. The human response seemed suicidal. Admiral Yoon's combined fleet numbered barely 80 vessels, looking like toys next to the hegemony armada. The size difference was so overwhelming that even seasoned hegemony officers felt a moment of pity for the humans who had come to die. "They're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," Vashtak mused, as his fleet formed battle lines that stretched across space like a wall of death. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Neither, they were incredibly human. Vashtak expected the humans to charge forward in a desperate last stand, or perhaps try to flee. Instead, they just sat there in space, waiting. Admiral Yoon stood on her bridge with the calm of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. "All ships, this is Admiral Yoon. Operation Starfall is authorized. Execute on my mark." As the two fleets closed, something impossible began to happen. Every stealth ship that had been hiding in the dark spaces between stars suddenly revealed themselves. Every hidden weapons platform that had been disguised as asteroids or space debris came online. Every carefully positioned minefield across 47 star systems activated simultaneously. The hegemony's rear echelons, their homeworlds, production centers, their civilian populations suddenly found themselves under coordinated assault by forces that had been waiting in the shadows for months. The humans hadn't just been fighting a war, they had been setting up the galaxy's largest trap. "Impossible," Vashtak. S scream echoed across the fleet communication channels as reports flooded in from every corner of hegemony space. His homeworld was under siege by human forces that had somehow appeared from nowhere. His primary shipyards were burning, destroyed by stealth bombers that had been waiting for this exact moment. His government centers were being systematically captured by human ground forces who fought with a terrifying combination of high technology and primitive savagery. "How many ships do you have?" he roared at Admiral Yoon across the communication. "Channel enough," she replied calmly. But the true shock came when the battle fleets finally engaged. Human ships didn't just fight, they adapted. Within minutes of the first exchange, their tactics shifted, evolved, improved. What had started as a standard fleet engagement became a flowing dance of destruction that left hegemony commanders struggling to comprehend, let alone counter. The humans fought like no species the hegemony had ever encountered. Their ships moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually calculated chaos. They used the hegemony's own size against them, turning their massive fleet into a liability as ships collided with each other, trying to target the darting human vessels. Captain Kong, whose yoke laughed with pure joy as his destroyer danced between two hegemony dreadnoughts, their weapons fire, hitting each other instead of him. "This is what we trained for, people. Show them what humans can do." The Soul's fury rolled and twisted through space like a living thing, her crew working together with the precision of a symphony orchestra. They had practiced these maneuvers 1,000 times, but never in a battle this large. Every human ship was connected to every other human ship through quantum communication networks that let them coordinate with impossible precision. Meanwhile, on the hegemony capital world, Major General Park Hyoshin led the final assault on the government complex. His Marines moved through the corridors with methodical precision, their power armor interfacing with alien technology they had never seen before, adapting and overcoming with each step. The hegemony defenders fought desperately, but they were facing soldiers who had learned warfare from humanity's greatest teachers, other humans. Every tactic they tried had been countered by human forces somewhere in their history. Every weapon they deployed had been faced and defeated by human ingenuity. "Impossible," gasped the hegemony defense minister as human soldiers appeared in his supposedly impregnable command center. "Our security systems are the most advanced in the galaxy," corrected Sergeant Lee Min-young, as she deactivated the alien weapons with casual efficiency. Her armor's computer systems had already analyzed and cracked the hegemony security protocols. Now they're just expensive junk. Within hours it was over. The galaxy's end. Pride of the hegemony fleet drifted powerless in space as human boarding teams secured every deck. Vashtak himself sat in the brig of a human ship, staring at the walls in shock. He had never imagined defeat was possible. "Surrender," Major General Park told the cowering Hegemony Council as his Marines took control of their capital building.
Oh.
Your fleets are destroyed, your worlds are occupied, and your supreme war leader is our prisoner. The war is over. The Zephyrian coalition watched in stunned silence as their human allies achieved in 3 months what had seemed impossible: the complete capitulation of the Hegemony Empire. Ambassador Veltar stood beside Admiral Yoon on the bridge of the Soul's Fury, watching hundreds of Hegemony ships surrender en masse. "I don't understand," he whispered, his 3 eyes wide with amazement. "How did you do this?" "What?" "They had 5 times as many ships, weapons that could destroy planets, technology that seemed impossible to defeat." Admiral Yoon's expression softened slightly as she watched human medical ships moving to help wounded Hegemony soldiers. Even in victory, humanity showed mercy to their enemies. "You asked for support. We gave you what we do best, which is..." Gestured to the tactical display showing human forces coordinating relief efforts across liberated worlds. Their former enemies now working alongside them to rebuild what had been destroyed. War, peace, hope, humanity. The greatest weapon Earth's children possessed wasn't their technology or their tactics or even their courage. It was their absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible when people they cared about were in danger. They had spent 10,000 years learning how to fight each other. And when they finally found enemies worth fighting, they brought every lesson learned in humanity's long, bloody history to bear. The Hegemony had wanted to conquer the galaxy, to rule over lesser species with an iron fist. Humanity had other plans. As the last Hegemony warship powered down its weapons and accepted human terms of surrender, Admiral Yoon smiled. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Now came the harder task: turning enemies into friends, building peace from the ashes of war, and proving that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to destroy, but their determination. To protect those who couldn't protect themselves, the galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what the humans had intended. The end.